You're not shallow for knowing what a stranger ate for breakfast. Your brain thinks she runs your tribe. You've never met her, you never will. Still, you know her diet, her divorce, her new kitchen. Here's what's actually happening, and it's older than fame itself. You're not gossiping. You're gathering intelligence your ancestors once needed to stay alive. Why does it feel so
Mm-hmm.
personal? Because for most of human history it was. Picture a small band of humans, 40 people, maybe 60, huddled against a landscape with no roads, no walls, and no locks on any door. No cities, no writing, no maps, just a fire, a cluster of huts, and one question older than any of them. Who, in this group, actually knows what they're doing? One man tracks a wounded antelope for 3 days without losing the trail, sleeping rough, reading broken twigs and flattened grass like a second language. Another woman knows which roots are food and which ones stop a heart mid-beat, sorting them by smell before anyone else even sees the leaves. A third reads a darkening sky and names tomorrow's storm before the wind even shifts, before a single cloud has fully formed. Why do these three get watched more closely than anyone else around the fire? Because watching them costs nothing. Copying them keeps you alive. The rest of the band studies every meal they eat, every tool they carry, every scar on their arms, who they married, which direction they walked at dawn, and why. What happens to information like that, gathered day after day, fire after fire? It gets passed down, story by story around the fire, as the group's most valuable currency, worth more over a lifetime than any single meal. Not food, not weapons. Attention. In 2001, anthropologist Joseph Henrich and psychologist Francesco Gil-White, working out of the University of Pennsylvania, sat down with data pulled from societies scattered across the globe. What did they actually find underneath all of it? Two separate systems running status inside every human group they studied. One is dominance, a fist, a threat, the loudest voice in the circle, forcing others to look away first. Chimpanzees run almost entirely on that system, but humans run mostly on something stranger. The second system is prestige, status freely handed over, never taken by force, traded willingly for access to a skill worth copying. So which one does your attention actually follow? Not the strongest person in the room, the most useful one. Your ancestors didn't need the hunter's muscles. They needed his choices, which berry he spat back out, which cloud shape sent him running before the first drop fell. Copying a skilled person, without paying the cost of learning it firsthand through trial and injury, kept people alive one more season. So what did the brain build to make that copying automatic? A shortcut, cheap and permanent. Find whoever everyone else is watching and watch them too. Free information, paid for entirely in attention. But there's a second piece to this machine, and it isn't about who you copy. It's about who your brain can even recognize as real in the first place. How many people can one human mind actually hold on to at once? Anthropologist Robin Dunbar, at the University of Oxford, spent years measuring exactly that question. He laid primate brains side by side, comparing neocortex size against the typical group size of each species, and found a hard ceiling repeating across the data. For humans, that ceiling lands around 150 people. Why 150 and not 15,000? Because a brain that size is expensive to grow and expensive to run, and evolution never spends more than it has to. Not a rough guess, a cognitive wall, wired directly into the size of your neocortex. That's the same wall your great-great-grandmother lived inside her entire life. Fire to fire, face to remembered face. So what happens when that wall meets a world she never had to live in? It was built for a world with no photographs, no video, no face appearing in your palm 50 times before lunch. Your brain has exactly one system for recognizing a face it has seen repeatedly. Does that system ever stop to ask how it saw that face? No, never once. A face you've watched cry on camera, laugh on camera, walk out of a courthouse on camera, lands in the exact same folder as a face from around your actual fire. There is no folder in your head labeled famous stranger. There is only one folder, and it's labeled people I know. That's why the outfit change, the breakup, the new kitchen, none of it registers as distant news. It registers instantly as tribe news. So how do you actually put a number on something this quiet, this automatic? Psychologists have actually measured how far this filing error can travel. In 2003, John Maltby, at the University of Leicester, working alongside James Houran and Lynn McCutcheon, built a questionnaire specifically to track it. What did the celebrity attitude scale reveal, once handed to hundreds of participants across multiple countries? Three distinct bands. Most land in the first, entertainment social, the modern equivalent of trading notes about the best tracker's technique back at camp. A smaller group slides into intense personal, where a stranger's private life starts filling emotional space that once belonged only to real relationships. Where exactly does entertainment tip over into something heavier? A much smaller group crosses into borderline pathological, where the line between watching the chief and believing you're close to the chief dissolves completely. 3 levels. One shared root system underneath every single one of them. Does any of this only apply to genuine A-list fame? Red carpets, magazine covers? It doesn't. The circuit doesn't check follower counts. What does it check instead? It checks repetition. A cooking creator with 40,000 subscribers, watched every week for a year, gets filed into the exact same folder as a movie star watched for a decade. Fame was never the requirement. Familiarity was. So if fame was never the real trigger, what actually is? Now here's the part that changes everything. For most of human history, a person could realistically track one chief, maybe two if the band split apart across 2 valleys, 1 or 2 people across one entire lifetime. Sounds almost quaint now, doesn't it? The prestige system evolved to monitor a small handful of high-status people. Total, inside one territory. So what does that number look like today? Open your phone right now. Count the faces you recognize on sight, faces you have opinions about, faces whose entire week you could summarize without pausing to think. It isn't 2, it's dozens. Some weeks it's hundreds. What was this circuit actually designed to handle back when it was built? The circuit built to track one chief around one fire is now running on an input feed 1,000 times larger than anything it ever evolved to process. Nobody handed it an upgrade warning that this new feed wasn't a tribe at all. So who benefits from that mismatch? Every platform you scroll figured this out long before you did. An algorithm doesn't need to understand prestige theory to exploit it. It only needs raw data showing that a human face holds your eyes on the screen longer than a landscape ever does. So it feeds you faces, one after another, without a single pause. Founders in glass offices, actors on red carpets, strangers with ring lights and good lighting, and a well-lit kitchen behind them, performing competence at a scale no real hunter-gatherer chief could ever have managed across one lifetime, let alone one afternoon. What does your ancient tracking circuit do with all of that? It reads every single one of them the exact same way it once read the best tracker back in camp. This person knows something worth knowing. Pay attention. It has no setting for paid actor, no setting for sponsored post. It has exactly one alert, firing over and over, dozens of times a day. High-status individual detected. What does that actually look like hour by hour inside one ordinary day? Think about your own morning. Before your feet touch the floor, before the kettle even starts to whistle, your thumb is already moving across the glass. A face loads, then another. A wedding, a breakup, a body transformation, a private jet landing somewhere warm, a kitchen renovation finished in a single cut. Why does any of it land in your chest at all? Because as far as your oldest circuitry is concerned, that pull is identical to the one your ancestor felt watching the tracker return from 3 days in the bush. It doesn't know the difference between news from your fire and news from a studio 3,000 miles away. So the next time you catch yourself scrolling through the same stranger's photos at midnight, someone you will never meet, someone who will never once learn your name, what is actually happening in that moment? Not weakness, not shallowness, a 100,000-year-old survival circuit, older than language, older than fire itself in your family line, doing precisely the job it was carved to do, aimed at a target it was never built to filter out. One question loosens its grip faster than any guilt ever could. Mid-scroll, thumb still moving over the glass. Will this person ever sit at your fire? Most of the time, the honest answer is no. You're not obsessed with celebrities. Your brain is only doing its job, the same job it has always done, tracking the chief. It just never learned that this one isn't real.